Thank you very much, David, and thank you everyone for coming to Rome. I'm really amazed how many people came, and especially so many patient organizations attending this conference. And this project is really close to all of our hearts because, like David was saying yesterday at the AGM, that this is something that we had hoped to do for many years, and now we can actually do it. Really educating patients about research. And actually this presentation is about how do we bring it to life, because you see that at the end of each of the 3 sessions that we want to tell you a bit about how EUPATI is going to tackle that. And Hidron was saying it's just a 5-year project, it's a very short time, how do we do all that? And this is basically, we are trying to give you some impression on how the consortium in partnership with all of you is planning to implement that. And I'd like to pick up with a presentation that Nicola did in the beginning to say what is the vision and what are the challenges that we see, because we see a window of opportunity for patients. We see a lot of empty seats in all these different areas, and being a patient advocate and cancer survivor for more than 10 years myself, I've been going through the hard school that also Filippo was referring to in his last slide, which I really appreciate. It's been a hard learning curve for the HIV community, for the rare cancer community, for rare diseases, for the parent project, to engage with all the different stakeholders, because making a change in medicine is not about a patient group doing something, or industry alone doing something, or academia having a great idea. It is about partnership and getting people together, and then getting all the different stakeholders together to change the system. We need to change public opinion. We need to work with competent authorities, because the regulation probably doesn't fit to how fast medicine is changing at the moment. We need to work with policymakers to make them understand that when they're talking on behalf of patients, they're not always doing us a favor introducing legislation. Clinical research needs partners as patients. With orphanization of diseases, we have a lot of changes, and patients have shown, like in the Duchenne project, have shown that patients can really drive research and support research to make it more effective, and in partnership with industry and academia. HTA agencies are getting more and more of a challenge for some of us, and it's important. I mean, in UK, it's probably advanced for a couple of years. We've seen that patients can really make a change, but they had to hard fight for it. And I think in other countries, it's just at the start. And then, of course, the research ethics committees, Nicola was addressing that. How do we, when we ask on the political level for having a patient in every ethics committee, where do the 5,000 patients come from to have every ethics panel with a qualified patient? So a lot of challenges ahead, and that's why we have a EUPATI, and that's why it's so important for us. Nicola has shown that, and just I don't want to repeat that, I just want to highlight that this project is about partnership between all the different stakeholders. It's about collaboration, and I'd like to highlight a bit how we are embedding that in the project as a whole. And just to outline that, and I'm, let's say, scratching the surface on that, you will hear more details from Niels later on the second session about it. What we're actually doing, and yesterday at dinner I was discussing with a patient advocate and a very engaged person. We have a pyramid because we need very experienced patient advocates that can engage on an EMA level, on the competent authority, on the national area, to engage on clinical trial design and very technical discussions, and we need more people that understand the R&D process end to end in real much detail, that they can be qualified partners to work with authorities, with industry, clinical researchers. And I myself, as a patient advocate, have experienced quite often that I sat down with clinical researchers or clinical development people from industry and academia, and at the beginning of the meeting they had no idea why they have been dragged in this meeting with patient advocates, because it was just, they thought it would just delay their work. And at the end they left out and said there are so many things that came up that we hadn't thought about because we're not working with patients in our jobs. So it's very important. So that's the training program, to really train experts in patients to understand the whole process in detail. Educational toolbox is important, to have tools for you as patient organizations to educate your own constituency how drug research works. And the internet library, everybody's complaining about a lot of crappy information being out there on Google. I always say complaining and regulation won't help. It will only help if we provide better information on the internet, because we can only replace bad by good information. We cannot forbid bad information. So we're creating an internet library that everyone who wants to understand about pharmacovigilance, how clinical trials work, and what personalized medicines are, there's going to be an EUPATI internet library in 7 languages. So that as just in general, and what I was highlighting, and that came up a couple of times in the previous discussions, this is a partnership. And we're grateful to IMI to fund this, because you've seen IMI as a whole mainly funds research, and so we are something like a very new concept in the IMI design, to have really patients, let's say educating patients about R&D and about science. And you can see actually the consortium, and that's why I'm bringing it up. We have 4 leading patient organizations, pan-European patient organizations, deeply involved in the leadership of all the different work, with the European Patients Forum leading it, the European Genetic Alliance for Genetic Diseases, Eurotas for Rare Diseases, and the European AIDS Treatment Group as leading patient organizations, plus IPOSI from Ireland, who has been by experience a patient-led partnership already for many years. We have a couple of universities, Hibernia College, University of Manchester with NowGen, and University of Copenhagen with BioPeople. So strong academic input into the project. We have a couple of research organizations and NGOs like the Drug Information Association, EURTC, ISPOR, and EFGCP. And we have a number of industry partners which have a vast knowledge in not only medicines, R&D, and drug research, but in IT, in capacity building, and working with patient groups. So there are many people in these companies which are fully dedicated, like Søren was also outlining their project. And this is all about partnership to bring all these groups together. But of course, we are aware that people are looking at this as a public-private partnership, a partnership with industry. And I would say the old-fashioned model is just to easily criticize that we are working with those that develop products or drugs. And on one hand, we are addressing that by not being disease-specific, product-specific. So we are not talking about specific indications, because then immediately we would be criticized. But also we wanted to be clear that we are benchmarked by those that are probably critical and see that. So we've built a project advisory board, a regulatory advisory panel, and an ethics panel, which comprises all different disciplines and let's say key experts in all the different areas, like HTA, economics, evidence-based medicine, bioethics. NICE is supporting us, and Cochrane is part of our advisory board. So we really want to be challenged in how we implement things to make sure we're getting this right. And also the ethics panel is, for example, looking at our declaration of interest. So everybody involved in the project is publishing their interests. It's all on the website already for a couple of days. So we're trying to safeguard us against criticism, because we think this partnership is so essential for us, and we can't be criticized on doing that. Just to think about how to bring it to life, I want to give you some understanding how it's organized. We have in total 7 work packages. I'm the overall coordinator of the project, and I run work package 1, which runs coordination and communication. We have the network, work package 2, which Ingrid leads, and Virginie. And this is basically also coordinating this meeting, so their team has made it possible, and I thank them all for that, to bring you to Rome, and which is also your contact point if you're part of the EUPATI network. The needs assessment, running focus groups, understanding all the needs of the different stakeholders is basically led by Work Package 3 and by Bella and others. And they're also looking at what material is already out there on educating patients on R&D. Number 4 is probably the most challenging work package, I would say, because those are the guys that are going to produce content. They're going to produce content on all the 3 different levels, the trainings, the toolbox, the internet library. And that's a huge task if you think, I mean, much is available in English, but even if you look, I'm a German, even if you look at Germany as the 2nd most spoken language in Europe, there's hardly any information in many areas in German language, not to speak about other languages. And we're doing that in 7. So it's going to be a huge challenge, and keeping it updated, like Hildrun was saying, is of course something that is being addressed in work package 7. I'm just taking that out in sustainability. So how can we sustain the platform also beyond the lifetime of this project? Then, of course, e-learning, because we know that, we've brought you all to Rome. Even in the beginning of the project, we had to reduce the number of these conferences from 5 to 2 because of budget constraints. It always looks like we have a great budget, but if you break it down into 5 years, into 7 languages, into 12 countries, how much money is then left? And that's why most of our training needs to come via the internet. And we have Hibernia College as an expert on e-learning in the project consortium. They're building the platform to educate if we're not meeting face-to-face. And we have some face-to-face meetings. Then, of course, course deployment. That's actually where the courses will come out. And this is the basic structure. Of course, I don't want to talk too long about structures, but I thought it's probably important for you to understand. And when you talk in coffee breaks with the leaders, they are all here of the different work packages. Ask them what they do and how they do it and when they do it and so on. We are ready to answer your questions. And I was mentioning national platforms, and I think that's very important for you to understand, because people always look at Brussels as being some kind of island somewhere in Europe, which nobody really understands. And we are aware that doing that in 12 countries is not possible without your knowledge on the local and on the national level. And that's why EUPATI is starting 12 national platforms in the 12 countries you can see on the right side. Some of you will ask, why is my country not on the list? It's of course a very tough decision on limited resources, and we've chosen 7 languages which are most frequently spoken in Europe. And these are the countries where these languages are actually natively spoken. And there are some regions in Europe which speak very well English, so we prioritize those where probably English is not so prevalent. And one of the languages is also Russian, because we know that Russian is not a strictly EU language, but a lot of people, especially in the older generation, probably understand more Russian than they do English. So we thought to cover some areas, at least with our material, that it can be understood. And so these platforms, and we can just ask you to engage on them as soon as we initiate them, the first meetings being done at the moment. The main tasks are being to understand what is needed on the national level and to feed that into what we're developing. And on the other hand, to help us, that all the patient groups in these areas and the public understands the project, gets the material, gets the results of this project. Otherwise, we would just put it out and would hope that people would find it. The national platforms have a key role in that. And of course, you can help us in finding speakers and trainers and people that help us on content development and translation and whatever. So the national platforms have a core role in that. So that's actually my last slide. I'm referring back to what Nicola said. There are still too many empty seats in medicines R&D. Sometimes not even the seats are there, so we need to put the chairs at the right place. But when we put the chairs and ask for that, like in the ethics committees, we need to have someone sitting there and providing input. And that's a challenge, so join us to bring that to life. Thank you so much.
We have time for questions to Jan. Please.
Morning, Jan. It's a very good overview. It's just really a sort of definition issue, really, because we're already getting into an area where people are asking us what we mean by medicines R&D. Is that just restricted to drugs? Is it just restricted to clinical trials? And I believe that the understanding is it's much wider than that, but without it being defined, I just thought it might be really helpful at the start of this conference to determine what we mean by medicines R&D.
I mean, the basis of the grant agreement of our project was basically to focus on medicines R&D. So really to look at end-to-end processes, how new drugs and new treatments are being developed. Even though knowing that, of course, this is not the end and we are discussing also in the sustainability work package, we need to address how do we extend, because we are aware that in cancers, of course, surgery plays a major role, radiology plays a major role, and so on. So we are, of course, looking at that, but at the moment, the main scope is to look at the medicines R&D process end to end.
Michael Coleman wants to comment.
Yes, I think this is a very important question. What I can tell you is that more and more in our perspective, you know, medicine research and development indeed encompass all aspects, including patient access. So I think that we should not be too restrictive there. And it's true that R&D, this is industry jargon, if I may say that. And I think that you should really take a broad perspective, which at the end is the patient perspective.
Any other question? Yes, here in the background.
Good morning, I am Simone Silenzi, I represent the Italia Glioblastoma Multiforme Cancro al Cervello. It's a group born in internet, in a social network, and after we began to meet ourselves in all region of Italy. About communication, I would suggest to contact the most important social network or provider like Google. I already met a representative of Facebook, and I would like that create a liaison, a link with EUPATI, because many people live a part of his life in a social network. So I think it is necessary to connect the reality is creating with EUPATI and the social network. About language, I would like to reach a level in which we can talk with many languages with a translation service or another way, but it's important. You are German, I am Italian. We need talk with in one language, but is important translate for the people, because all people, Italian people of the group about glioblastoma need information in Italian. Is a need, important need. Thank you.
You're raising a very important point, and that's why translation of the toolbox and also the internet library into the 7 languages was from the beginning at the core of our project. And I mean, I couldn't agree more on your reference to social networks. I mean, I've been building a number of patient organizations purely based on social media, and I'm really keen to have that implemented. So in Work Package 5, we are discussing how to integrate that in our e-learning platform. In terms of translations, that's something we are heavily discussing. I've just had a heavy discussion yesterday evening about that, because it's always a balance between, do we do it automated way with a very low quality? Can we afford to have these kind of micro-translation services? At the moment, I'm not 100% sure our budget will allow that. But that's what we want to work with the national platforms, actually, to understand what are the needs, how are we going the right way, how can we support language and communication of people about the content we're generating. But thank you for raising that, it's very important to us.